Welcome to the Corner of Knit and See, episode 511. My name is Laura. I'm also known as Fluffy Kira on Instagram and Blue Sky. I blog over at thecornerofknitandtea.com, which is where this episode and every episode show notes will be. And I have an Etsy shop called The Corner of Knit and Tea, where I sell my handspun yarn and knitting patterns. Hi, how are you? It is Monday, March 3rd. I can hardly believe we're in March already. And it is a somewhat gloomy but not terribly cold day. I'm coming to you from just outside of the Kansas City metro area. It is not a terrible day. The weather actually has been lovely for the last week or so. Last Friday it got up to 70, and even this weekend it was in the 50s. I've been able to walk outside and it is such a breath of fresh air, literally and figuratively, to have beautiful weather, because we have had several sub-zero freezing episodes this year, and snow and ice, and I'm sure we're not done. I'm certainly not trying to jinx that for us, but it has been pretty nice. Although today, all of a sudden, it got kind of gloomy. I'm wondering if we have rain coming in. I think we might for the next couple days. But it's still not supposed to get super, super cold this week, so I will take it. So I hope that you are doing well and that you had a good weekend. I have a very mixed week. So I have some new knitting projects to show you. I have one FO and one new project, and then I can show you what I'm going to cast on next, at least for now, and a little bit of spinning. I don't have any quilting, and I did embroider just a little bit, but probably not enough to bring it back and show you. So this one should be kind of short and sweet, but it will have knitting content. I know last week was very much an anomaly. So today I am drinking in my Hershey's mug from when I visited Hershey's, Pennsylvania. I'm not drinking hot chocolate, although that would be perfect. I am drinking the Backyard Blend tea from a local tea shop here, and it is black tea. I believe it's Assam. There was very little left in the bag, and so I tossed the rest of the bag into a little tin, and I thought I took the sticker off the bag and stuck it on the tin, but I don't think it stuck, so it probably got thrown away. And so it is black tea. I think it's Assam, and then it has some raspberry and peach and a few other kind of summery fruit flavors, so it's a nice kind of caffeinated pick-me-up at mid-afternoon, but a little bit fruity, and so I am enjoying that this afternoon, hoping it will help me blast through the rest of my workday. So I hope that you're doing well. Like I said, I got some crafting done, not a ton. The one thing that happened this weekend is my knit group met in person. So I have been meeting with the same group of friends at knit night. We started in a store back when I moved here in 2008. And the store closed within a year or two. I think the store closed in early 2010. And I don't think it was early 20, no, it was early 20, it was like early mid 2010, like around April. And a group of us decided that we wanted to keep meeting, and up through the pandemic, we met every Wednesday night somewhere in the city. We found someplace to go for dinner, usually a Panera, or, you know, like a step up from fast food, but not a lot, so that we could have dinner together and sit and knit. And we did that all those years. And then when the pandemic came, we switched to Zoom, and somehow we haven't really switched back. Like obviously we could have, and we've gotten together a couple times in person, but really we kind of lost our in-person meeting, I guess because many of us ended up working from home. A few people moved away during the pandemic or took other jobs in the last few years, and so now we just meet on Zoom every Wednesday night and every Sunday night. But we've been meeting for almost 15 years, and so we met up on Saturday at one of our old haunts and had lunch and sat and knit, and it was lovely to see everyone in person and to be able to see what kind of projects they're working on. And it was all too short. We only had about 2 hours before we kind of picked up and left, but it was lovely to see people in person, and we might try and meet in person a little bit more. We didn't stop meeting in person. Well, okay, we stopped because of the pandemic, but we didn't not start again because of the pandemic. We just kind of, our lives moved on, and so we just never quite got back in the habit, but maybe we'll get back in the habit now. But it was nice to see everyone and see everyone's projects, and I actually, by the time I started a new project there, and I am not I guess I should say I am not used to, I have gotten out of the habit of starting new projects when I'm sitting with a group of friends. So I started it wrong and came home and ripped it all out and started again. But I am back to where I was when I left off. So yeah, so I will show you some of that today. So first of all, I have a finished object, and this is a hat, and I showed this to you a couple weeks ago. I started this out of scraps and leftovers that I have, and this is a pattern by Sarah Shira, who is, I affectionately refer to her as the gnome lady. She is Imagine Landscapes, and she is the one who does all the gnomes, but she also has some great patterns for people sizes, hats and sweaters and shawls. And one of her hats she designed to use leftovers from Advent sets and gnome mini sets. And it is designed for fingering weight yarn, but I decided to try it with some of my scraps left over in worsted weight yarn. And so it was lots and lots of fun. So the pattern comes, it is sized, I can't remember the exact name for it. It's something about an Advent hat. I will put the link in my show notes because the designer has a website, so you do not have to go onto Ravelry to get it. It is a pattern that's designed to make use of leftover scraps and fingering weight. And so what I did is, it is sized baby through adult. And what I did is I chose to start with the numbers for the baby size, the cast on numbers for the baby size. And that worked perfectly for an adult size hat. And then I just used the knit until, because it has you basically knit until you knit a certain amount of ribbing that it gives you in both color repeats and inches. And then it has you knit to a certain point in inches on the hat, and then you do the decreases. And so I just followed the pattern basically exactly like that, except like I said, I used the baby size for the cast on number, but because I was doing an adult size hat, I used the adult sizes for like how long to knit for. And this one's a little slouchy, but it's cute. Here, I'll show you. I'm wearing a ponytail, so this is going to screw up my hair. But see, it's cute. It's a little big on me, but it's perfectly cute and serviceable and just a little bit slouchy in the back. And I used all kinds of scraps that I had. And actually, I still have enough scraps that I used up a couple scraps. So I completely finished them off. But I still have enough scraps from like pinks and greens that I could totally make a whole nother hat. And I very well may. I haven't decided. But I feel like this is like the perfect hat when you have just a little bit left and you don't want to throw, it's like too much to throw away, but not enough to do more than a couple rows on a hat. And so that is what I use this for. So it's lots of fun. It's just a simple colorwork pattern with plain rows in between. And the only problem with this hat is that there are a million ends to weave in. Of course there are. I could probably do it with a magic knot or something else, but it was a quick knit and enjoyable pattern. And I have plenty more planned. In fact, this week I have a bag of all of my, let's see if I can show you this, all of the blues that I have. I probably can't even show you all of these, but like I have all kinds of blues in all different colors. And so my plan is to probably use this one as the main color and then use all of the other colors as bits in between. So I have a bunch of color bundles that I put together just to kind of make it fun. So my plan is this week I'll work on the blue bundle, and that is that hat. So that is the first thing that I worked on and finished. I did work on my mosaic blanket. I got another repeat done, but I did not bring it to show you because it looks the same as it ever does, same as it always does. And that's going to be going on for a while. I managed to finish the second ball of the cranberry color. It uses slightly more of the cranberry than it does of the black. I'm almost done with the licorice color. Sorry, it's actually beetroot and licorice. I finished the second ball of the red, which means I have 4 balls to go. I'm officially like 2/3 done there. And then I'm almost ready to switch over to another one of the black. So I'm making good progress. I'm getting through probably a repeat and a half a week. And I will just continue that until I finish, but certainly through March. So the next thing is I decided to do another knit. I have been sort of in a, I don't want to say a slump because I've been very, very crafty, but I've been in a little bit of a slump because I have a few sweaters that I really have wanted to cast on for, and all of them require some kind of math or thinking or decision making or knitting and measuring my gauge and then figuring out where I'm going from there, and I just haven't been in a mind place to do that. Between my tasks changing at work and everything that's going on in the world, my brain just wants to be in its happy place, which is knitting something lovely and not having to think and make a lot of of decisions. And so I decided maybe what I needed was a little bit of a palette cleanser, a small knit that I could just kind of work on now, a little something for me, but that where I wouldn't have to start a whole big project. And I do still want to make March and April about charity knitting, so I decided to sort of try and balance that out with a small project. So one of the projects that I've been interested in knitting, and it is one that has like gained a lot in popularity, there have been quite a few knit-alongs of late, is the Grid Gambit Cowl. And that is a cowl pattern by Samantha Guerin. Let's see, I do not have a picture that's going to show you nicely enough what this is. You can kind of maybe sort of see it here, but it's very grayscale because I printed it out on my printer, and it's really hard to see. So basically what it is it's a bandana kerchief. That's kind of what it looks like, and you seam up these edges here, so it just ends up as a bandana kerchief. And it is a slip stitch mosaic knitting piece, and she designed it to be used with handspun, which is really lovely because, of course, I have plenty of handspun that I should use. And so I went looking in my stash. Technically, it calls for DK weight, although she suggests that you can do fingering weight if you want to hold your fingering doubled. And I tend to spin somewhere between, so I tend to spin about sport weight, which, of course, is between fingering and DK weight. And so I was thinking about what colors I wanted to go together, and I didn't want to have to buy any new yarn because I'm really trying to use from stash. And I do not have a lot of single skeins of DK weight in my stash. That's just not something I generally stash very often. But of course I have handspun. So I pulled out, it is a beautiful braid. It's kind of hard to tell, but it is like all the rainbow colors, but kind of all neon. And this is called Marin's Pencils, and I believe it's from Three Waters Farm. It's a color that she only dyes sometimes, and it's beautiful. And I bought the braid and was so pleased with it, and then I spun it up, and I made some mistakes in the spinning. I have a few areas where I did not get my plies right, or where I have lumps or bumps or knots. And so I deemed the skein not good enough to sell in my Etsy shop and saved it. And I always wanted to knit something with it because it's riotous color. It's pink and purple primarily, but there's also there's little bits of orange and green and teal, and so the way I think I spun this is I spun this as a 2-ply fractal. No, I spun this as a 2-ply, and what I did is I tried to divide the braid vertically. So basically split the whole long braid, split it in two, and then I spun each one on a separate bobbin and plied them together, trying to keep the colors running together. That's a tricky thing to do. I didn't weigh it. I didn't quite make it. So for the first part of the skein, probably the first half to 2/3 of the skein, excuse me, I need more tea to finish waking up. For the first half of the skein, the colors stayed together really well, and for the second half of the skein, they didn't stay together as well. And so what you're seeing on the outside here is where they more didn't stay together as well, where you're seeing a lot of barber pulling, but the inner set part of the skein actually has the colors very well together. They kind of transition really well, and I will show you in just a second what I mean. So this is the handspun that I am using, and then I needed something to sort of work against the handspun, and I had this lovely skein of Madeline Tosh Pashmina, which is a sport weight yarn. I had bought this a long time ago. This is probably at least 5 years old because I had bought it to do with another project, and it, I believe, is in the colorway Moon Dust. I think I have do I have the label in here? I'm pretty sure I do. I think, yes. Okay, so this is Madeline Tosh Pashmina, which is 75% merino wool, 15% silk, 10% cashmere, and the colorway, sorry, it's Dust Weaver, 336. But it is a gray that is like overdyed in lavender, so it's very purple leaning. And so I thought these two would go beautifully together in my project, and so far I am right. So this is the Grid Gambit Cowl, and this is the mosaic pattern that it creates. And you can see I'm already going through different purples, and the purple is very subtly turning into what I think is then going to be pink, and then I think it goes from there to kind of a greeny teal. So I'm very excited about this project. I do have, well, okay. I have some small concerns about the math because I have roughly what the pattern calls for in terms of yardage, I think. This is a skein of, oh no, I have far more. Then never mind. So the pattern called for a skein of DK weight that I think is around 260 yards, and it said be real careful because the pattern uses up the main color, which is the DK weight skein, not the handspun skein, uses up almost all of that. Well, this actually has 360 yards per skein, so actually I have plenty. So I'm probably going to upsize this a little bit because my gauge is a little bit off. I'm not surprised. I'm using thinner yarns than the pattern called for. The pattern called for DK weight, and I'm using sport weight, and so I am down a couple needle sizes because while I don't mind it being a little bit airy, I didn't want it to be like completely holy. Not wholly religious, but wholly like see-through. Anyway, so I am determining where precisely I'm going to knit a little bit of extra. I have to look at the charts and see how the pattern goes together to figure out if I can knit a little bit extra. Basically, I wanted to just have enough to go around my neck and to be a decent length. And my only concern is that because my gauge is a little bit smaller, I don't want it to come out too small. But I do know a lot of people who have knit it in larger sizes and have said that it comes out really generously sized. So I'm not too concerned, but I will probably knit a few repeats in various spots, and I just have to remember to duplicate them on the other side because this is knit on the bias, but it also creates a piece that's supposed to be symmetrical. And so I just need to figure out if I'm going to add, where I'm going to add, and how I'm going to add, and then kind of, like I said, duplicate that on the other side as well. So that is what I have so far. It's really pretty. It was fun. Like I said, I've done it twice now because the first time I did it wrong. I read the pattern wrong, and unfortunately when I printed it out on grayscale, not all of the symbols showed up. Oops, I guess next time I'll have to print it out in color. Anyway, so I am just in love with this, and this is going to be a good kind of project to keep my interest over the next few weeks as I want to work through it, as I'm working through other things. So that's kind of what's on the needles, two smaller projects. You know, I'll have a hat, I'll have a cowl going, and then working on that blanket, which is coming along and a main focus, but I do need to take some breaks from that because the blanket is a little bit heavy on the needles. And the mosaic knitting is a lot of flipping my yarn to the front and the back and reorienting the needles, which seems to be not my wrist's favorite thing, which I guess I probably shouldn't have picked another mosaic project, but we'll see. Anyway, although that's got a lot more knitting than it does purling. So there is that. Anyway, that is what I'm working on in the knitting realm, and maybe I'll have another finished hat to show you next week, and we'll see. So the only other thing that I'm working on is I decided to start a new spin. I got a little frustrated with the spin that I was working on, and so I picked a new braid, and this is a braid of Hello Yarn. I showed this to you a few weeks ago, and you know, now I don't remember anything about it. Let me grab my spinning notebook. Give me 2 seconds. Okay, and I didn't write it down either. Great. So this is Hello Yarn. It is a club fiber, and I will have to pull out what it is. It feels like it is either Polworth or Tarhi, probably, maybe Merino, and it is in purple and yellow, which is just really great, and then grays. And I'm loving spinning it. It's drafting really easy. It might even be Falkland because it really, it feels a little bit like that. I will double check, and I will put all of the information in the show notes, and we'll have it for next time. But it is, like I said, a Hello Yarn club fiber, probably from sometime last year, and I am just enjoying spinning it. I'm through about a quarter of it, and so I will just keep spinning on that and hopefully have another braid to pop in the shop in the coming weeks. I'm spinning this in 15 to 20 minute increments because that is what my wrist will tolerate, and so it will be a little while, but I am having fun with it. In quilting news, I meant to sort of sit down and get started quilting that quilt that I made at the retreat last time, the top, and I still need to piece the backing together, so I need to cut 2 pieces from the backing fabric and sew those together to create one major piece of backing, because it's a big quilt, and then I need to make the quilt sandwich, so the backing and the batting and the top, and then I need to figure out how I want to quilt it. I do actually think that I already have a place that I want to send it, so that will probably spur me to get my butt moving to quilt it. Part of the reason that I sort of sat and didn't do much with it this weekend is because I did some thinking about how I want to quilt it. It's the one, if you remember, that I cut up the layer cakes in a couple different directions and put them together. And I think I'm going to quilt it with squares, but I think I'm going to do free motion squares and kind of overlap them a little bit and make them kind of a little bit wider and spread out. I don't know exactly how to explain what I want to do. I could draw it, but I'm not going to draw it. I will show you when I get there. But my plan is to try and get that going this week and this weekend, because my mom sent me an article from the LA Times this weekend. I grew up in Los Angeles. My parents are still there. My mom sent me an article from the LA Times this weekend about a woman who lives in Altadena who is collecting quilts and distributing them for fire relief. And she says they continue to need more quilts because even people will be rebuilding their homes and will be in transitional places for a long time to come. And so she is just going to continue handing them out and distributing them. And she's kind of doing it by herself. She's not in affiliation with a quilt shop or anything else, but she has already gifted something like over 100 quilts. And people have come by her house to pick them up. And so her house was not affected, but she lives in the area that was affected in Altadena. So my mom sent me the article and I followed her on Instagram and she seems very nice. And so I want to send quilts out into the world where they can be used, particularly if I know I'm not going to keep them for myself. So I would like to finish that one and get that sent out to her. And so hopefully that will motivate me in the next 2 weekends to get that finished up and sent out to her by mid-month. And then I am debating my next project. So I started a project, but I also have another thing that I am interested in. So I think I talked a little bit about, I don't know exactly what I want quilting to be. We received a newsletter from the Modern Quilting Guild talking about, they kind of do some quarterly challenges. And so they have a challenge coming up in the next couple months talking about negative space. So negative space would be, theoretically, it would be very much like in knitting. The negative space is like the areas created by the lace that you're making. So the negative space would be like the holes in the area between there. Now in quilts, usually what that tends to mean is, particularly in modern quilts, is that it tends to mean like the I don't want to say non-color, but non-print, non-brightly colored portion of a quilt. So for instance, if you build a quilt that has like some big objects on it in bright colorful fabrics, and then you have a background of white, the background pieces, the white pieces, are sort of considered your negative space. And what they're encouraging us to do is create a quilt with obvious negative space, and then create quilting patterns in those spaces to kind of like fill that negative space and give you a contrast between like the bright colored fabric and then maybe some more subtle patterns on the negative space. And I have been turning this over and over in my mind. Like I went to bed both days this weekend thinking about this, and I woke up in the middle of the night having thoughts about this, sometimes like I do about knitting. And I'm kind of puzzling it through. I have an idea that I want to do, but the way I remembered it in my mind is not exactly the way the pattern is. Like I went back and looked at the pattern and I was like, oh yeah, that's not the picture that I had in my mind and the piece that I wanted to do in my mind. And so I'm still kind of turning this around. Basically, they suggested that March is kind of for planning and thinking, and April is for executing. And then in May, we're supposed to share those at the May Quilting Guild meeting. And the Quilt Guild's meetings are always the second Tuesday of the month, which can be very early in the month. I think in May, it's probably like May 8th, I think. Well, I'm trying to remember. Sorry, it's Thursday. It's the second Thursday of the month, and so it's like May 8th or something. And so I'm trying to think about it this month so I can buy my materials and spend my time quilting next month. And it's supposed to be a fairly small quilt. It's supposed to be kind of not exactly a sample, not exactly a practice quilt, but like it's supposed to be a smaller piece so that it's something that you can kind of sink your teeth into a technique, but not do it on a huge, enormous quilt that then you have to, you know, wrestle with to quilt. So my plan is to maybe do a small wall quilt. Like the ones I have hanging on my wall, so something less than 36 inches square. And I think I can do that by just bringing the block size down a little bit. And so I'm just kind of thinking about how I want to execute it, and I kind of want to use like a big oversized print. And so I've got lots of things that I'm thinking about, and so I will bring some of that as I start to create that next month. So a little bit of knitting, a little bit of spinning, a little bit of quilting, and I will say goodbye for now and see you next time. So I hope that you are having a lovely week, that you are finding some solace in your quilting, some peace, some creativity, some arts, not just quilting, sorry, in all of your crafting. You're knitting, spinning, embroidering, crocheting, any of the crafts that you choose to partake in. So I will say, as I always do, happy spinning, happy knitting, happy sipping, and I'll see you next time. Bye.